All right, good morning and welcome. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Philip Ramos, and I am a coach and trainer for a local Utah company by the name of Three Key Elements. I'm a certified Gallup strengths coach, and I am absolutely excited to have you here with me today. Whether you're watching this live, you're watching the recording, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much. I do these interviews every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time and every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, and I absolutely love doing them. So what we do here is we talk to people about their strengths, about their talents, about their natural talents, the way they naturally think, feel, and behave, and what drives their performance. But before we jump into today's interview, I just want to take a little bit of time here, kind of give you guys a chance to get to know me a little bit more. This is my wife here, my wife Melissa. She's a key component into who I am today and what got me started and where I'm headed in life. And she is absolutely a major part. In fact, that song where when I love someone, I love them all the way. She helped me discover that within myself, that, with strengths and who I am, that I can feel I'm free to love people all the way. So I absolutely love that. A couple pictures of my family here. My oldest boy, this is a transition, right, from left to right here. But these are my kids. My oldest boy is Sebastian. My youngest boy is Manolo. And my oldest boy is currently serving a church mission in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Spanish speaking. So super proud of him. And he's about ready to, right now he's doing some home training, and we drop him off next week in Provo. So he's a wonderful, just a great example in so many ways. And then it's going to be me, my wife, and our 8-year-old. Sorry, 8-year-old. I still think of him because there's a 7.5, 8-year gap. So that's what I was thinking. But so Manolo is 11, and so he is going to be. He's our third wheel. He's the kid. He wants us to sell our home when Sebastian leaves, get a travel van, and just go on the road. That's 100% who he is. So we're excited to be a 3-wheel team here moving forward pretty soon, starting next week. Just a little introduction into Three Key Elements, the company I coach and train for. Kirk and Kim Duncan are the president and vice president of this company, and they're on a mission to teach and activate people's minds, help them manage their mood, and help them get on the path towards their goals and their mission and what they want to do. And they've been doing it very, very well for quite some time, very successful for some time. And over the course of the last 16 plus years, now 17 years, they've done a lot of trainings. A lot of them were live, and now we've kind of transitioned into this online stuff. But so just a little intro, just a little information about Three Key Elements, myself. But today, what we're going to be talking about, and where I want to spend time in, is talking, obviously, introducing our interviewee. But I want to introduce real quick just some ideas around strengths and how strengths work. So the Gallup, okay, is the name of the company. So you go to gallup.com, or you probably may be familiar with the world poll that they put out there in the world. They're one of the top data analytics company in the world. They reach all kinds of the countries, organizations, teams, some of the largest companies in the world. In fact, over 90% of Fortune 500 companies use the Clifton Strengths Assessment within their organizations and teams in order to better understand people's talents, which drives their performance, better understand the way they naturally think, feel, and behave, so they can apply that within their jobs. And leaders and corporate and presidents and CEOs can support these talents within them. Gallup is very well known, as well as the Clifton Strengths Assessment, number one. Number two is over 1,000 universities and colleges worldwide use the assessment within, whether if it's as a coaching environment or a club or some type of environment where students are encouraged to take the assessment in order to figure out what are some of the natural ways that they can incorporate who they are within their career moving forward. The work environment has become competitive in a way that people want to be valued, right? People want to be there. People want to feel like they're important. People want to feel like you acknowledge what's great about them, and understanding, number one, your talents and strengths can dramatically impact and help other people understand them as well. So that's one of just a quick intro in terms of what, strengths are, Gallup is, that sort of thing. But what I want to do is I want to start off by sharing a quote with you today. And this quote here is probably one of my favorite quotes by Don Clifton. Don Clifton is the creator of Gallup, of the Clifton Strengths Assessment. He was also the former president of Gallup. His son now, Jim Clifton, is the current president and CEO of the company. And one of the things that I love this quote here. As you begin to think seriously about the unique constellation of talents that you have, you recognize that other people each have their own unique combination of talents as well. You begin to see them through a different lens. The things that used to annoy, irritate, frustrate, maybe you misunderstand, drive you crazy, are now seen as the very things that make the other person productive and successful. This quote right here is what dramatically shifted my life, my marriage. I took the Clifton Strengths Assessment a little over 3 years ago, and it totally changed my life. It put me on a different path in life. It put me in a different direction. I would have never coached or mentored or done anything like this had it not been for me understanding the value of my own strengths and then helping people understand theirs. And that's really my mission now, is to help people see who they are and understand their authenticity. We often use words of authenticity and look for authenticity by thinking, by how we woke up that morning, right? Or our personality, or more importantly, our personal reality, right? What's going on in our life currently. We change our hair color, we eat differently, we change our relationships, we change our jobs, we dress differently, all these different things which we think are creating authenticity, but really authenticity comes from the way you naturally think, the way you naturally feel, and the way you naturally behave. And that's the exploration of your, first off, your talents, and then turning your talents into strengths. And it's all meant to not necessarily dictate what job you should work in or what you should be doing, but more, how do you drive performance in any role in your life? So whether you're a parent, a spouse, an entrepreneur, maybe you are a coach, maybe you are doing something in your life where you're influencing people as a manager, and utilizing the way you naturally think, feel, and behave to engage more, to influence more of what you do, is what creates authenticity within that role. You find joy in it, you find passion in it, you find your needs being fulfilled, you find you find motivation, to wake up in the morning and go after it again. So that's super, super important. Now, with that being said, this in my personal life, right? Strengths has not just, like I said before, changed my life, but it completely transformed the language within my marriage. So I grew up speaking Spanish in my home. I learned Spanish before I learned English. I learned English when I was, when I had to go to school in kindergarten. It actually sent me home. I had to go learn, English from Sesame Street, and then I went back to school. And so they didn't have ESL programs. So if you think of strengths language, think of it in this very same way, is that here I was trying to go to school and learn and learn in or engage in other people in a different language than what I grew up speaking or grew up knowing. So what's important, strengths is no different. We have the way we naturally think, feel, and behave. So the way so Gallup, the way it's measured out is you're 1 in 33 million in terms of what's called your talent filter. So this first page that I'm showing you, and I'll show Shiree's in a second, is this right here is my talent filter. This right here is my wife's talent filter. And they're 1 in 33 million in the way all 34 talents are laid out. And what's important to note that obviously with that number being what it is, right? This creates, one of the things I love about strengths is people often get nervous about taking personality tests or assessments because they feel like it's going to put them in a box, or they feel like it's going to label them. And I could not express more the fact that, if anything, strengths will show you, the Clifton Strengths Assessment will show you just how unique and individual you are, just how different you are really from everyone else. me and my wife, I think, are a great example. Out of the top 10 talents or strengths that we share, 6 of them are similar, are the same. But yet we are so different in so many ways. So going back to the language barrier, right, of growing up, I had to learn this language in order to be successful in this new environment of learning and going to school. I had to learn how they can, what words they were saying, what was the meaning behind the words, what was the definition behind these words. Strengths is no different. I've been married to my wife now for 21 years. We're going on 22 this year. And I'd like to think of, we've struggled in our own ways, like any marriage, but we've always worked on it. We always have. We've always wanted to have, the goal was always to have the best marriage, right? Which I'm sure maybe in you might have been the same case for you. But along the way, along the road in that, we've had troubles and we've had complications or just different dynamics, right? That create different experiences for each one of us because we process those experiences differently. We experience those experiences maybe a little differently. We feel differently about them. We act differently within them. We think about them differently. And when we don't understand the way the other person naturally thinks, feels, and behaves, or maybe even taking consideration of it, we often assume or believe that they should feel the same way we do, right? Because we went through the same thing, because I was there as well. And so throughout our marriage, we've gone through counseling, we've done marriage retreats, we've done seminars, you name it, we've done it because not because we were ever broken, but because we cared enough to do these things, right? Well, nothing clarified the misunderstandings or the language or the communication more than the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Not a single thing we ever did. All those things benefited. We benefited and grew from all of them. But none of them clarified the misunderstandings. None of them clarified the communication the way this clarified the communication for us. Going back to, again, right? Here I am going to kindergarten. I speak Spanish, they speak English. I don't understand what they're trying to tell me. I don't understand what they're trying to, I don't. My brain doesn't comprehend it. Yet they want me to understand. They want me to feel the same way. They want me to act a certain way, but I don't understand. Same thing is here within our strengths. I operate at a different way from the way I think, feel, and behave. My wife operates from a different way in terms of the way she thinks, feel, and behave. The moment I could read her operating system, understand her operating system, understand her software, does that make sense? All of a sudden, we were able to communicate in a totally different way, at a totally different level. Same thing, the moment she understood mine, it dramatically shifted everything. So if we're looking at this from an image perspective, right? The goal is for us to be this constant connected marriage, right? Because we love each other. We want to be with each other. We love each other. We want to always be connected. But the truth of it is I don't know the way I naturally think, feel, and behave. I honestly don't. I don't. I don't know. I could guess. I could think about my talents, but could I honestly put them on paper? I could run fast. People liked me, but outside of that, right? How do I really sit down and do that? The benefit of taking the assessment, it's very clear in terms of these motivators, in terms of these needs. Over 27 million people have taken the assessment. So there's a lot of data that they're pulling from. And there's so much that you can learn from the assessment itself. Now let's take, for example, now I want to understand the way my wife naturally thinks, feels, and behave, because more importantly, she knows how she thinks, feels, and behave. Now I know how I think, feel, and behave. The goal for connection is much easier. When we don't understand this, and the reality is this is what happens. We have these wedges and their toilet paper and their toothpaste, right? They're the gas or the red light in the car, right? And not Mother's Day or Father's Day or Christmas, right? All these wedges are being just created within our relationships. Because number one, two things. Number one, I don't know the way I naturally think, feel, and behave. But more importantly, I don't know the way my wife naturally thinks, feels, and behave. I just don't. I don't. She tells me her needs. She tells me, right? I know her love language because I've read these books and these things, but do I understand really the way she naturally thinks, feel, and behave? In fact, does she even know? Because if she doesn't know, how can she tell me, right? If she doesn't actually know, if it's not on paper for her, how can she really explain it to me so that it makes sense to my brain? Because I think, feel, and behave differently. So this ends up being the reality. The reality is we want connection. We want this, but the reality is this is what we get over things, over miscommunications, because of I think, feel, and act differently than my wife thinks, feels, and acts. Number one. Number two is I actually don't know the way I think, feel, and behave, and I absolutely don't know the way she thinks, feels, and behave. So how can I really create ultimately what I want? That is this goal and this reality are probably, and I don't want you to think of this is just about your marriage. This could be literally any relationship you have in your life, a working relationship, your kids, anything. I had my son who's going on his mission take the assessment when he was 17 because I was so blown away by what I read about myself and about my wife. I realized how much better I could be as a parent and the relationship I had with my son if I understood the way he naturally thought, felt, and behaved. Like that, I wanted that information, and it's dramatic. It's shifted with the way I parent him, and I'm not parenting him from my point of view. I'm trying to parent him understanding the way he naturally thinks, feels, and behaves so that I can communicate to those things. Because if I just communicate to my needs or to my process, how is it actually going to get to him? Does that make sense? How is he going to feel it? How is he going to work with it? I'm doing our relationship a disservice. I'm creating a wedge. I'm creating not a little wedge, a massive wedge, because I am communicating from my needs. I'm communicating from my motivators. I'm communicating from the way I feel. I don't understand how he feels and trying to communicate to those things. And so this goes right back to learning a new language. This is a new language, and knowing this language, you're learning the new language of each person, right? I had to learn the language of my son, the language of my wife, in order to have really the relationship that I want. If I really wanted to have a successful relationship, a successful a career with her, right? Or with my son or with the people I want to do, I better be ready to understand that I need to learn your process if I really want to develop that. And that's incredibly important. That's massively important. And so with that being said, I would love to invite you. So I have decided, it's one of my favorite things to teach. This right here is probably, if you've ever followed me in anything that I do, this is my favorite thing, is relationships and strengths. In fact, it's why I became a strengths coach. So I'm going to be doing on June 25th, Saturday at 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That Saturday, instead of an interview, we're actually going to be doing a workshop. I'm going to be doing a 4-hour workshop in understanding, appreciating, and working with the strengths in your relationships. Okay. If you're interested in participating in this workshop, email me here. You can feel free to come, by yourself. We're going to have breakout rooms. It's going to be super interactive. But if you come with a partner, that would definitely, I think you would have more value because it's something you can practice after. The only requirement I ask is that people have an assessment. That's it. That's all they need is an assessment, because then there's a foundation that we can start with. But I'd love for you to come participate. Now, I did a version of this live, and it was a phenomenal event, super successful. But I want to do it now. I want to do it online, so we can, because there were so many people that couldn't come. There were so many people out of state that I work with now, even out of the country that I work with. And so I'll be doing this as a workshop. And in fact, my wife and I are going to be doing it together, because I want you to hear from her experiences and what she's learned. Obviously, because this is what I do, 90% of my workday is all involved around strengths. It's important that you guys hear from her and her point of view and her perspective. So we're actually going to be doing this together. So raise your hand if you guys want to attend. If you want to attend, if you think that you want to attend, you want to participate in this, I'd love to have you come join me and my wife. We're going to be doing this together. It'll be June 25th, Saturday at 10 a.m. To 2 p.m. It's a completely free workshop. You can invite coworkers, your siblings, other relationships you have. Maybe you lead a team of people. Anywhere that you feel like you have relationships, this is going to be a wonderful workshop for you to attend. And we're going to go through some understanding, some appreciating, and then working within the strengths of your relationships. I met with the dynamic of this and the value of this. I had a mentoring appointment with two sisters. They're like best friends, and they have been trying to launch this business for some time. They had a goal to launch it in February. It's now going into June, right? And they're not as close as they want to be to actually launching it. And they're best friends. They work very well together. But part of the problem was they weren't effective together. Does that make sense? And this is a dynamic that I can help people understand is how can you become more effective in your strengths with other people. And so really very quickly we were able to dissect some different things and move towards them, and within a week already they're accomplishing more than they've done within the past few months, because I showed them, right? They're best friends for multiple reasons. They get along for many reasons. They complement each other's strengths, but they're not utilizing some certain strengths in order to be more effective together. And that's where I'd love to help you. I'd love to help you. So if this is something you like to participate in, I'd love for you to email me so I can get you out the registration link. I'll be putting together some email campaigns, some marketing campaigns throughout this starting this coming week. But this is a labor of love for me. So I hope you can join. Please feel free to invite anyone that you know would love to attend. I promise they'll gain value. All right. So with that being said, I want to move straight into our interview now. Let's go, and I will let me give you guys a chance to get to know here Miss Shiree Best. So take a look at her strengths here. Number one, connectedness, input, belief, learner, and empathy. I love this quote. I love how discovering my strengths continues to change my life. This is fun because this is the goal, is that people learn that strengths isn't necessarily the beginning, or sorry, knowing your strengths is not the end all be all. It's really not. Knowing my strengths, when I took my assessment and I had my assessment, the person that invited me to take it, they didn't necessarily explain to me anything. They didn't walk me through anything. So I actually didn't look at it for 10 months later until I was inspired to read it. And then from there, I got a strengths coach. But I had no clue. I had no clue what any of those words meant. And so many people take their assessment and they don't pursue anything after that. So I love this quote here, that discovering your strengths continues to change your life, because that's, even for me, I'm in a constant journey of learning how to be me. I lived 40 years, a life that wasn't producing the results I wanted. And the results I did have, even though I had a lot of success, I lost myself along the way. I burnt out. I was definitely inauthentic. I wasn't authentic in the things I was doing. And so I felt very lost. And so I love that this is where she's at, is that she's continuing to utilize her strengths to change her life and discovering how it does that. So anyway, so I was super excited to have her. I just love this. I absolutely love this, Shiree. I think you're awesome. I think you're amazing. So with that being said, let me just do a quick little intro of her. And Shiree, if you want to jump on and unmute yourself. So Shiree's a wife and mother of 7 awesome grown children. She's a registered nurse and beginning her career as a life coach. She loves people, flowers, and chocolate, possibly in that order, she says, improving herself and helping others in any way that she can. She's enthusiastic, optimistic about life, and is learning to be happy when being stretched. Isn't that the truth? I love that, because if you're choosing into strengths, I promise you, you're going to get stretched. Or if you're choosing into any growth, right? Any real self-development or improvement, we're going to get uncomfortable with it. She has been a strengths finder enthusiast for 2 years and is still learning. Oh my gosh, Shiree, you're incredible. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So with that being said, Shiree, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, turn on your camera, and let's introduce you to my friends here, to the world, and as people watch these interviews, even for years to come. So Shiree, good morning. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing, Philip?
Doing awesome. Doing awesome. Thank you for being here. Absolutely love this. I love doing this. I don't know. I just love all of this. What can I say? Okay, so let's start off by tell me a little bit about your introduction to the assessment, right? How did where did where did that whole journey start for you?
Okay, well, I had kind of a similar journey as you, as far as like I took this strengths test and then didn't do anything with it at first. So back in 2017, I had a boss who wanted me to take the strengths test. So I did, and it was just the introductory one where it gives you just the top 5.
Right.
And I mean, I love stuff like that. So when she wanted me to take it, I mean, because I've done like, well, I won't name them, but there's several other really popular
Yeah.
kind of personality type tests.
Yeah.
And I had done those and I always learn from them and I always think they're great. So I got this one and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And like you, I didn't really understand what any of the words meant exactly. And because I had just done the introductory one, it doesn't give you like the detailed, you specific information. And so I thought, oh yeah, this is really cool. This is really fun. Kind of went over my head. And so I didn't do anything with it clear until, so that was in 2017. Then in 2020, you started getting into strengths. So of course I follow you. And so I think it was you specifically that encouraged me to go ahead and like just get the full report. And so I did. And that had so much more detail. And it's been amazing on a lot of levels for me. Just I mean, just to read those kinds of things about yourself and I know you said some people like have good experiences and some people don't. For me, it was a great experience to learn more about myself.
I love that. I love that. And just to, acknowledge, our relationship started before strengths, right?
Definitely.
And now our relationship, because of strengths, it's interesting. I love this because you're a great example of how much we have changed in our communication, our relationship. And when there is a conversation, there's very much a conversation around those processes, right? We talk about those things. And so that's awesome. I was just thinking about that. I was realizing, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember these conversations. And you were one of the first people that I actually, when I originally started, doing kind of dabbling into strengths coaching, you were one of the first people that I remember meeting with and talking to about and explaining some things. And so this is fun because I can see how, again, our relationship has shifted because of the clarity and understanding of who you are, who I am, and really ultimately that's the benefit of it all.
Yeah, that's great.
Super cool. Okay, so you take the assessment, you got your results, right? What were your, you kind of mentioned that you enjoyed them, you had a good experience. What was something that, what was really your thoughts around your results, and what was the thing that just kind of like jumped out at you, off the paper? You're like, whoa,
Okay.
theme, it could be a domain, but you're just like, how was that for you?
Okay, so I mean, I've heard a lot of other people talk about like what their experiences were. I've heard you and Melissa both talk about what your experiences were. For me, I was very happy to understand myself better, and I didn't have a problem with any of my top strengths. Like I was like super excited about them, and I was like, oh, well, this explains this. It was almost like I was looking at myself through blurry eyes, and then I put on the glasses of the strength finders and it clarified for me. Like all of a sudden I could see clearly who I was. And
Man.
I loved it so much. So for me, it was such a good experience. And and the thing that probably jumped off the page for me was my very first strength, which is connectedness. And for me, it just explains so much about who I am. I'm just like, oh, I just like fireworks going off everywhere. Like, I'm like, that explains this. And that's why I do this. And that's why I think about this way. It just was so exciting for me. And it's not like a one and done, like what you said. Like the more I go through my life and I apply that lens of clarity to whatever it is I'm doing. And I have some specific stories I'm going to share with you at the right, when you're ready. But it just helps me so much in my life to be able to see who I am and how my strengths can change my own life and the lives of others.
Wow, that's incredible. And everything I do know about you, and I don't spoil any stories because, maybe you'll share something, but I've always loved, and respected, I've heard stories about you and your husband, Kim, and, some of the things that you guys do, date night every Friday, about the way you guys do certain things. And I just, it's so wonderful to see. Isn't it so great to see that when we actually are living in a certain way or doing things in a certain way, all of a sudden we see on paper, boom, boom, and these fireworks going off that often I think we downplay those things. We don't see how they're motivators, right? We don't see how, how that connectedness or these things actually have influenced, actually have played a major role in in how our kids and our relationships, our work and our passions. And the moment that we notice the fireworks and then we almost want to set them off again and
Yeah.
again and again, and we know now how to do that. And that's the value of strengths. And I think that that's what so many people miss out on. That it's not so much that we take it so that now you have a name for it. You take it so you have a name for it, and now you know what button to push over and over and over again to
Right.
feed that, right? To acknowledge.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that you had that experience, because that, and from what I'm hearing, only made you want to learn more or dive further in, because it validated that. It said
Yes.
the things that you've always thought or the things that always meant, we know that they're there and we see that, but the moment that it clicked for you, all of a sudden it's like, yes, I will.
It
Over
was
and over.
like fuel to move forward, right?
Yes. Yeah, so true. Awesome. I love that. I love that. So with that being said, what are you, what would you say, like, what would you say, like, is your power? What would you say, like, as you're acknowledging your connectedness, you see your strengths, what are some of the combinations, or what are some of the things that you feel like, what, this is my superpower. Like, this is what I do. This is how I crush it. This is what I do great in life. What do you think that is for you?
So, I mean, when I was thinking kind of about what I'm, kind of what my superpower is, if you want to call it that, it just kind of like hit me as I was considering that. And it's definitely my ability to connect with and love people. And it's really interesting because, is it okay if I jump in and tell a story at this point?
Oh, are you kidding me?
Okay.
Story
Okay,
over,
perfect.
do it.
So, so I recently, well, kind of at the beginning of the year, felt really prompted to start taking a life coaching course. And it wasn't something I'd ever considered doing, way different for me. I mean, I have done a lot of teaching and I love teaching, but I'd never considered this path. And so I started, I've been working on that. So I'm in the middle of doing that right now. But I recently went back and read through my strengths. And granted, I hadn't read, actually, I listened to them because, okay, so this is what I do. So I recorded all my strengths so I can listen to them while I drive. And I used to do it like every single day when I first started, so I could memorize them and understand them. And I did my husband's too, so I could understand and listen and remember his. And it was so awesome. And as I've known them really well, I kind of haven't listened to them every day now. So I listen to them once in a while. And so recently, after I started this life coaching program, I was listening to my strengths, and I heard, even though I have them practically memorized, I heard something completely different than what I had ever heard from listening to them before. So I went back and I pulled out my papers and I read them, and I'm just going to share a tiny excerpt from each one that has to do with connecting and loving people, because this is what really I feel passionate about. So under connectedness, it says, you feel closely linked to other members of the human family. My second strength is input. By nature, you customarily figure out what makes each person special. Okay, belief is my third. Driven by your talents, you feel much better about yourself and life in general when you have a worthwhile cause or project to which you can dedicate your mind, body, and spirit. I feel that way about life coaching. Fourth strength, learner. By nature, you genuinely care about the people you meet. Your fondness is apt to be apparent to them. Strength number 5, empathy. You make a point of knowing particular people as individuals. You might notice what makes them distinct or different from everyone else. So those are just small excerpts. There's more, but I mean, as I went through this, I was just mind blown, because it's like, I don't know, like when you read something and you're in a different stage in life, you get something different out of it.
Yes.
This was something way, like, I can't tell you how blown away I was when I read this, and it's just like those words just popped off the page. And I've read this probably dozens and dozens of times. And yet now, being in a different place in my life, all of a sudden it was way different. And I feel, and it's like when you add, like, vinegar to baking soda and it just goes whoosh. That's exactly how it felt for me. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, I suddenly see something I've never seen before, and it was there the whole time. Amazing.
That's incredible. That's, I just love that, and again, I want to go back to your quote here. I love how discovering my strengths continues to change my life. So here you are, because you participated within a program that I did before.
Yes.
And within that program, that was one of those assignments, right? And here you are, implementing, doing this process, and now your life has shifted into a new direction, or a new opportunity.
Right.
And you go back to the way you naturally think, feel, and behave, and all of a sudden these dots are even connected even harder and more solidified. And I think that's such a great example of how important it is for us to bring who we are in every single thing that we do, right? I got a new relationship in life. I'm going to bring who I am. I'm pursuing this new career. I'm going to bring who I am.
Yeah.
I have this thing that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to bring who I am. And the more and more we do that, that's where when we listen, we hear, we read, all of a sudden, boom, right? Connection, boom. And whether you have, obviously you have connectedness, but everyone else that might have, other talents, they're still seeing how those talents play a part within that environment, because it's who they are. And that's the beauty of it. The opposite of that is when life coaching or a new career or a new relationship steps in, and we go into those environments modeling what we think is successful, go into those environments thinking, okay, I want to do something totally different than what I've ever done before. And then, a week goes by, a month goes by, a year goes by, and you're like, wow, I definitely don't want to be doing this anymore, right? Because we're not, it's not who we are. But the moment we go into something new, and the first thing we do is bring who we are into that environment, it fuels it in a different way, right? It fuels who we are in a totally different way.
Yeah. And one thing that's interesting too is, I mean, the mentor that I'm taking this coaching program from has way different strengths than I do. And so, and some of the people around me that are also doing it, way different strengths. And so I was at first concerned that I would not be able to perform to their level because I didn't have their strengths. But this like, I mean, just when I had this experience of just this aha with my strengths, I thought it doesn't matter. I can come from who I am and still be very successful.
My gosh, Shiree, I just absolutely love this. I mean, you're speaking my language. You're freaking my what, I just like, this is the kind of stuff that makes me so emotional, because, this is the kind of stuff, this is the reason why I never ever thought I saw myself more than I mean, I was always in sales, I was always in things, but I never saw myself as a key component in life, right? I never saw myself as that person. And it was my strengths that showed me some things that for some reason this assessment gave value to, but I never gave value to it, right? For some reason this Don Clifton gave value to it, but I never gave value to it. All of a sudden, the moment that it was on paper and that there was value there, And then I started playing in it. Next thing you know, I'm coaching. Next thing you know, I'm doing things like this, things that I would have never, ever pursued in my life before. But it's this idea of celebrating who I am that gives me that courage, that gives me that faith, that gives me that passion and that love for it. So my gosh, I can relate in more ways than one to that. And I think that I think the truth of it is so many more people can. Like I've had the privilege of, obviously through interviews or meeting with people, but so many people that I've had a chance to work with or meet with in this idea of discovering who they are, they now can pursue what they want to do unapologetically, right? Whether if it's coaching, whether if it's marriage, whether if it's business, entrepreneurism. I'm working with a gal. She reached the top rank of her network marketing company in 2 years, and and completely burned out because she did everything she did in the modeling someone else, and that's the downfall of pursuing big things in these ways of life and then totally checking out because we didn't pursue them in what makes us who we are. And so here you are starting your coaching journey, your mentoring journey, pursuing it in you. And I think
Yes.
that's beautiful. And that, I think that that's just super commendable.
And it's really like you said, it's the only way you can do it to be successful in the long term.
Yeah.
Like you can only imitate somebody else for so long. You have to be you.
Long term, right? I love
Right.
that that's important. We can find some quick success sometimes, right? By modeling, by like doing certain action steps and certain things. But long term success, we got to see ourselves in it, right? We got to see us being involved in that. So my gosh, I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so you obviously you have a superpower. I love that you have one. So what are some of the ways, you mentioned a little bit about, your life coaching now. I know you're a nurse. What are some of the ways that you use your strengths on a daily basis? Like what are, you have your strength daily basis. What are some of the areas that you're finding some huge success in the way you utilize your strengths in your day-to-day, in career projects, that sort of thing?
Okay, so I find that probably the strength I use maybe not the most, but I notice it the most, is actually not my top 5, but it's close. It's 6 and 7 are achiever and maximizer. And I find that I push myself on a daily basis to do, because right now I am so busy. I'm spending like 10 hours a week in school, and I'm a full-time nurse, and that's just not even including like normal life stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like all the other stuff you got to do. And so I find that I use those two to push myself to accomplish everything that I need to accomplish. So I don't know, I use those on a daily basis for sure. And I don't know that I use them more than in the others, but I notice them more than others because I can now recognize that that's how I'm getting stuff done. And that's how I maximize my time. And that's how I just push through stuff. So I really appreciate that I have those, because otherwise I think it would be a lot more difficult to be successful. My number one, connectedness. Since I have become more and more aware that this is like my top strength, I try and use it in everything. And so like if I'm in line at the grocery store, like I'm intentionally trying to think, how can I use this strength? If I'm in line at the grocery store, I'm trying to connect with someone if it feels like the right thing. And I'm trying to connect with my patients at work on a deeper level, like not just asking them, all the questions that I'm required to ask in my job, but then like actually like being in tune to, is there something more that I need to say, or what kind of conversation can I have with them while they're waiting for the doctor? And, what are they struggling with that I can listen to? And that, and then with my coworkers at work and with my children at home, and I'm having so much fun with this number one strength, because I'm just like intentionally trying to plug it in everywhere I go. And you can literally plug this one in everywhere you go. The other ones that come along with it, the input and the learner and the belief and the empathy, they just kind of follow along behind, and we all kind of go together. And so I just feel like I'm having so much fun right now, Philip.
I love it.
This whole journey's just been so great.
I love it. Well, you know, not just your connectedness, but you mentioned a couple different things. Number one is you mentioned, you know, your connectedness and not just, you know, working with your patient in terms of the questions, but maybe going further. And that's the input, right? People
Yeah.
with input, high input, they're gatherers of information, of data, of people and different things. And so your connectedness is you're choosing so aggressively in your connectedness, which forces your input to come out, right? Because as long as you're willing to connect,
Mm.
your input is going to show up right after that
Yeah.
and ask the question and deepen that connection. So sorry, I love that. I love that. The other thing that you mentioned is now is life coach. You're going 10 hour, 2 weeks of school. There's your learner. I mean, there's your learner going big time, right? You know,
Right.
it's like, okay, where can I learn more? How can I adjust? And even with going back to your strengths, you know, you're a great example of going back to, you know, I love how discovering my strengths continues to change my life. So you're always in that process of connecting, but then always learning from it. And so I can definitely hear, you know, within what you're doing, how you're doing. And what's interesting about this is I think in the past, not I think, I know, I would have listened to a story like what you're talking about and thought, and I'm sure many people do, many people that watch these videos or watch these webinars and stuff, and they think, oh, I should do that, right? I wish I could be like that. I want to do more of that. And the old Philip Ramos, had I been, let's say I was at a seminar, I'm in a coaching environment, I would have heard you say something like that. And in my mind, because I want to be more successful, I want what you have. I think, oh, I got to be more like her. I have to connect to people at the grocery store. I have to ask more questions with the people I'm doing. And what's so different is because I know my strengths, immediately I catch myself. The moment you're saying that, I catch myself thinking, oh, I should do
Mhm.
that more. And I think, no, what I should do more is implement my positivity, right? What I should do more is implement my woo, my communication, my activator. And the moment I go into that space, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this and this. And I think that that's what's so amazing is the more familiar we get with what naturally motivates us, is that when we hear something inspiring or we hear a story or we hear a goal or we hear something and we think, oh, I want more of that in my life, if we are not careful, we hear what the other person says and then we think, I got to be them or I got to do it like them. Where if we hear what they say and we listen to the results that you're having is you're enjoying it. The results that you're having is you're loving life. The results that you're having is all this wonderful success. So how can I have the same results, but I bring Philip Ramos to the table? And when I bring Philip
Exactly.
Ramos to the table, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to have just as much fun as you're having it without trying to be Shiree. I'm going to go at it and be Philip and get Shiree results. Does that make sense?
Yep. And I've been there too. I mean, that's why when I was kind of hesitant when I first started my current coaching program is because the very thing you're saying, like, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this because I don't have those strengths. I got to
Yes.
be me. How do I figure out how to be me and be successful? Is it even possible? It
Yeah.
so is like whatever your strengths are, you can be successful. I really feel like in anything using your strengths, not someone else's, because you can't be happy and you can't be successful using someone else's strengths, but yours are just as valuable as everyone else's and
Absolutely.
can be used in the just as great a way.
Amen. Amen to that. Stamp of approval. I love it. I love it. So with that being said, now one thing, and this is a question that I always like to ask when I know, because I know, obviously I know you, I know your husband, Kim, and your husband has taken the Clifton Strengths Assessment as well, right?
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about, because you guys were also, I remember doing an interview with, first you, and then I followed up with Kim before. So, and I've had, some time to talk to you both about your strengths. What is strengths like talk to me a little bit about how strengths has impacted your guys' relationship, as strong as it's always been, seven awesome grown children, right? So you
Seven
love
awesome children.
you love everything about your life and everything's going great. And like every marriage, it has its trials, its dynamics, its struggles, it's things you go through, no doubt about it. You guys have this awesome consistent date night you guys have been doing for decades, right? You guys play it to the hilt. You guys are, no joke, a great example in so many ways in terms of a marriage. But how has strengths what has strengths done, knowing, like what you said, you recorded his, you listened to his. How has strengths impacted your guys' relationship?
Well, it has really strengthened it. And like you said, like every marriage has ups and downs, and ours has too. We've been married 35 years this next month.
Wow.
And so that's really cool. But we have definitely had really great highs and really low lows, like probably almost all relationships.
Yeah.
And so it's just okay. So I how can I best describe this? I feel like we've been at a really good place for a long time, but you can always up it, right? You can always up it. And when there's lows, there's dips, there's ways to, instead of a wave like this, you can have a wave like this, so there's definitely ways to improve. And so Clifton Strengths has helped us to understand each other so much better, just like what you were saying about you and Melissa, about how it's just really helped you understand each other and know how to speak to each other. It's helped us. So for example, my husband's top strength is futuristic. That is, I'm looking at my paper, it's not my very bottom, but it's almost my very bottom strength. Like, I don't get it. I don't like it. It's not me, but it's his number one.
Yeah.
And so for years, I would get really frustrated with him because he'd be like talking like, to me, he's like talking like up here in the sky, all these ideas. And I'm like, come back down to earth. I have no idea what you're talking about. This doesn't make any sense to me. And so when it was such a huge aha for me when we both got our strengths, because we did them about the same time, and we read our own, and then we read each other's, and we talked about it. We looked through the book. It was such a huge aha to me to understand why my husband is always talking about all these ideas and great things, and that have kind of driven me crazy over the years. And once I understood that, it was like, oh, okay, well, I understand. And I can totally, it totally reframed it for me. I totally am comfortable, patient. Anytime he starts talking about that, I'm like, this is his top strength. And okay, not only do I understand it, but I can now see how it has led him to the accomplishments he's had.
Yes.
And I didn't see that before. Like before that, I couldn't see it. I just was kind of bugged a lot by it. And almost would tune him out at times, I hate to say. But now I feel like it's so valuable to our relationship because I have none of that.
Right.
But but us together with completely different strengths, we're so much more, we can do so much more than we can each separately. And so I now can not only understand, but I appreciate, and I can see the value, and I can see how it's helped him be successful in his life. And now I appreciate it, where before I didn't. Yeah. And then on the flip side, him understanding me has been fabulous because he has the same thing. So his annoyance, one of his annoyances with me over the years is that I ask a lot of questions. And so like, he'll be trying to tell me a story or explain something to me, and I have like a million questions. And he always has been a little, up until we did strengths, like this was like in 2020, always a little annoyed with me. Like I'd ask questions and I knew he didn't really like me to ask a lot of questions, but I just needed to know. I just needed to understand. I just needed to know all the details. Yes. But it always kind of bugged him that I would ask a ton of questions. So sometimes I'd try to tone it down and not ask as many questions, but then I'd have things nagging me in the back of my mind that I still wanted to know. So I'd still then later ask. Yep. And so when we read our strengths the first time, my input talks about me understanding things and asking questions. And when he read that, he was like, oh, he said that he thought that I was always questioning him, as in challenging what he knew. And I never understood that he thought that. That wasn't where I was coming from at all, but that's what he thought. And so once he understood that that's why I ask a lot of questions, I'm seeking to understand, I'm seeking to gather information, I'm seeking to put the puzzle together. I'm not questioning his authority or his, his judgment or whatever. I'm not doing that at all, but that's how he interpreted it. Right. Oh my gosh, it's been so huge for me. I can now like ask all the questions I want, and he isn't bugged. and he can talk about being futuristic and I'm not bugged. And that's just one example. Like there's more examples, but those are just a couple of examples of how our relationship has just been so enhanced. And so for any of you out there, whether you're new to strengths or whether you've been in it for a while, it just, oh, the relationship, it just helps you understand not just even like a marriage relationship, but any relationship. I've improved my relationship with my sisters over things that I didn't understand about them, and now I do. It just is amazing for relationships.
I love that. And that's so great because I think so often we think that, just like on this road for improvement or development, we think that we can't get better, right? Or we've maxed out or we've peaked out. And, knowing what I know about your guys' relationship, now, if I'm doing just some quick math, right? You said 35 years you guys been married. You guys took the assessment together about, 2000. He
No,
finally
2020.
2020, right? Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
2020. So that was a couple years ago. So
Yeah.
it was you guys over 30 years of being together, raising kids, building homes, doing life, everything that you did together. There was this in the back of this mind, in the back of your mind, you're frustrated with his number one motivator, his number one driver, the things that creates everything that he's done. And he's done some phenomenal things, right?
Yes.
I know some of his stuff, and here the things that motivate you and your needs and the things that you want to understand, the way you process things, he's annoyed by, right? Or that's 30 years of back and forth. Why do you do this? Why,
Isn't it shocking?
Yeah, right? And it's so amazing that quick when we choose into it. And this is one thing that I just want to compliment you and your husband, because I know this about you guys, is that when you guys are so committed to your relationship and so committed to really wanting it to improve, that you're also willing to be like, oh man, I have to be aware that this is a need, right? This is a real thing. And when you're just gonna blow past it and think, oh, he has futuristic and I have input, and that's why we don't get along. And you're willing to like look further into that and say, okay, this is my need. Like your questions are your need. His ideas and all this stuff that he wants to create are his. How can we utilize this to strengthen our relationship? How can we utilize this to create more? How can we utilize this to go even deeper? How can we utilize this? How can you celebrate his futuristic while he celebrates your input? And then all of a sudden it's like one of those things. It's like, it's one of those ones, it's easy to pinpoint people's love languages, but when you only have 4 of them, right? And say, okay, quality time, touch, words of affirmation, gifts, that sort of thing. But how much cooler is it when it's, I have a need for questions, and your husband's like, keep them coming, honey. Keep them coming. And all of a sudden this need and this thing is being fulfilled by him for you, and vice versa. He starts going off way up here and you're like, keep going, babe. Go, gosh, go for the moon, right? Crush it. Get it out there. And all of a sudden it's feeding him. And these are these unspoken things that dramatically can shift relationships without it, with just from the mere acknowledgement of it or the mere appreciation. And so I just love that you guys do that. I think what a wonderful testimonial of just of really caring enough to understand, really caring enough to clarify, really caring enough to say, wow, this is what it is. And I love you enough and care enough about you that yeah, give me more of it. Give me more of your futuristic, right? Give me more of your questions.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And there's this little place in my heart, like, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have known this years ago, but at least I know it now, right? Like, at least we are where we are. And what a wonderful gift the strengths, understanding strengths are. And even it sat there for years before I did something with it. And I had no idea what a treasure was sitting there waiting for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about let's talk about some reality as well. Now, okay. I know, so you have, I mean, I think we've given probably one of the best, well, how to say this, one of the best plugs for why you need strengths, right? Positive plugs as to why you need strengths, how you can benefit from it. But there's also a flip side to that. And that is every strength that we have it serves us. It makes us who we are. It drives our performance, but it also hinders us at the same time, right?
Right.
And so, if you were to say, what is one strength that you have in your top 5 that you would say that you're like, or maybe even your top 10? What's one talent that you feel like you still struggle with, right? What is one talent that you're like, oh, I got to watch that one because that one can
Mhm.
get away from me, or that one can go? What would be that one for you?
Okay, what immediately pops to mind for me is learner, because while I love to learn, sometimes I tend to gather a lot of information and then I don't do anything with it, but I've spent all this energy and time gathering it.
Yeah.
And I'll even like justify in my mind, I'll be like, well, I'm just going to write all this down and then I'll go back and read it later and I'll implement it later. I just got to gather it first and then later. So there's input in there. You can hear input in there.
Yeah, I can hear it. I love it. I love it.
But I'll just have all of this and then I'll implement it later, but I got to learn it first.
Yeah.
So I have tried to, I've tried to be really, really cognizant of that. I tend to do that because, as I have learned, having the information doesn't do you any good unless you do something with it. So I would say that that's one that I have become aware that while it's a strength, it can also play in the basement of my strengths, as you've taught me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's important. I love that you're using the word awareness and that you're aware of it, right? There's something that I teach. It's called, self-reflection and self-expression. And it's so fun to learn how positivity serves, or connectedness serves, or your belief or input, or your achiever, all these great things. We want to really engage and dive into the things that serve us. But we also have to recognize that there is such thing as going too fast. There is such thing as self-expressing to the point of hindrance, right?
Right.
There is such thing where, just take your guys' dynamic. If Kim keeps going so futuristic without answering your questions, and he's just going, that at some point could be like, okay, oops, like I'm going too far, right? And this is one thing I always try to teach people or help people understand, is that what you have, your desire to ask questions because you want to clarify, it's an unquenchable thirst. It's a bottomless pit because it's what you value so much. Same thing with his value to go and keep going, is same thing. There is no end to the going. He could go forever. So
Right.
we can see how easily positivity, I could easily be overly optimistic and hinder a tender moment, right? A moment where, and so everything has its balance, and knowing that balance, being aware of it, I think is absolutely crucial. And that's cool that you can see that, and that immediately you can say, okay, first thing that comes to mind, this is what happens often, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's incredibly crucial. Okay, so with that being said, what would, as we're wrapping up things here, what would you say is the greatest thing that you've learned from understanding your strengths? Like, if you could bring it all in to a nutshell, to a story, to an idea, what is the greatest takeaway that you have gained or understanding from diving into your strengths journey?
Ooh, this is a tender one for me. So all my life, I have struggled with feeling valuable.
Mhm.
I have struggled to feel like I was anything better than mediocre, an average, and there have been times, like especially when I was younger, that um, just didn't feel like I had any purpose in being on the earth.
Mm.
And it's been a long time of working on overcoming that. And the strengths just, learning these strengths has just shown me in a huge way that I have value, that there are great things about me, and that I even have a responsibility to do something with them.
Wow.
And it just was like the exact thing that I needed at the right time to push me past that voice that's been in my head like my whole life of you're not valuable. And these strengths have helped me along with, I mean, it's not just the strengths, but a huge part has been the strengths. It's like God's just placed things in my life at the right time to show me that I have value. And so anybody who does strengths, like when, you know, those times when you have to sit down and write down, oh, what are your talents or what are your skills? Or, you know, for instance, whether it's for a job interview or whether it's for whatever it's for, and you have to write those down. And there's been times when I would sit there and I'd be like, pen on paper, I don't know. I don't know. What am I good at? I don't know. What are my skills? I don't know. What are my talents? I don't know. So sad. Isn't that so sad? Everybody, because I can so see it in other people.
Yeah.
For years, I couldn't see it in myself. And so like, this is almost like just a ready-made list. Hello, right here.
Yeah.
And I don't question, like, are these really my strengths? No, I know these are my strengths. Like, it just resonates. And it's so, for me, I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but it just is so, that is my one biggest nugget takeaway is like, I'm valuable and here's what I'm good at. And here's what I'm natural at. And here's my strengths.
Wow. So first off, oh my gosh, Shiree, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for being so willing to be so open and so vulnerable and share with everyone, you know, how what this has done for you from, you know, for you, you know, the way you feel. And I think because this is those, and I want to say, I think more people can relate to you than people that can't, because I think that that's so often where people go through and they really question like that idea, what am I actually good at? You know, it's easy to look at our results and say, well, I played basketball. I think I can play basketball, right? Or I had this one job and I was okay at it. Or, you know, I was asked to dig a ditch and I digged it faster than anybody else, you know, kind of. but really, what is it what is it that I'm great at naturally, right? And I love that, like you said, it gives us that list immediately. And so for me, I relate in so many ways to that, is that this same thing finally put on paper, oh my gosh, this is what I'm good at. The last few times that people ask me, you know, so tell me about yourself. Tell me, you know, tell me who you are. Tell me what you're good at. This is what I'm great at. Let me tell you, have you familiar with Clifton Strengths? Are you familiar with Gallup? Well, my top 5 are da 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 da, and this is what makes me great, you know. And I have no problem saying that now, because that's exactly who I am. Because the moment I show up in that relationship, that's how I'm going to show up. That's what they're going to get. They're going to get 100% of that. If that's not what they're looking for, then that's okay. But that's what you're going to get, right? So I love that. Wait, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Shiree, for being, again, thank you for being vulnerable, and thank you for sharing from your heart, because I think that you, believe it or not, I guarantee you there's more people that probably feel that same way than not. So yeah.
And everybody's valuable. You just got to know it.
Right? You just got to, and you got to claim it. You got to say, you know, this is who I am. So with that being said, what would be, as the last question here, the last thing I'd like you to throw out, what would be the number one thing, as someone that's starting out brand new, maybe someone that's struggling in their strengths journey, what is the number one thing that you would encourage people, that encourage anyone to do as they begin their strengths journey, as they start it out? Or maybe it's, you know, maybe they've hit a place where they're like, you know, they're aware of them, but they haven't, you know, really move forward. What would be the one piece of advice you'd have?
So my piece of advice would be the thing that worked for me, that really immersed me into strengths. And that was, I mentioned this earlier, I recorded them and listened to them. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, for me, so being a learner and having sometimes that, you know, that tendency to gather information but not do something with it, I could have just read it, thought, oh, this is super cool, like this is great, I love this, and then put it on my shelf. And then, you know, 2 months down the road, someone would ask me, like, what's your top strength? I'd be like, what are they again? Well, I'm not using them if I do that. So for me, just to remember them, because if you don't know what they are, you can't maximize them. You can't play in your strengths. if you don't know what they are, if you're not aware of them, if you're not like, so for me, what worked was to record them because I have a drive to work. And so I record them, listen to them as I'm driving. I recorded my husband's. That was just for fun for me because I wanted to understand him better and I wanted to remember what his strengths were. But just that repetition of listening to them like every morning, and it took like 5 minutes to read them onto a, just a voice memo, and just to listen to that for 5 minutes every day. So easy while I'm driving. You could listen to while you're going to the grocery store or running errands or whatever. But just that repetition for me that really sunk them past the surface of my brain, like deep inside and down into me. That's what changed me. For me, that's what changed me. Just that repetition and thinking about it on a daily basis till they were part of me, till I could recite them without thinking, just because then they become truly part of who I am. And then I can make them even better. I can utilize them instead of them just sitting there on my shelf doing nothing and I can't remember what they are. So for me, that's my best piece of advice. Like, if you're going to do the strengths and you paid the money and you know what they are, don't let them sit there. Like, use it. And if recording it doesn't work for you, but maybe reading it does, or whatever it is, like, keep it fresh in your mind in some way until it becomes part of you. That's the best way.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Shiree. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Thank you so much for arranging. I know you had your grandkids and stuff, so I appreciate you arranging, your schedule and your time to join me here. Thank you. It's been phenomenal. It's been wonderful. And you're amazing. Tell Kim I said hi again. But thank you. Thank you for being on. I greatly appreciate your time.
I really appreciate yours too. It's been a blessing for me.
Awesome. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh man, so good. That was so great. So I want to thank everybody for joining me now today, because what a wonderful, raise your hand if you guys enjoyed that interview, right? Aren't these so good? I really hope that you gain value as we do these interviews, as we do these things. I want you to see, I want you to learn, I want you to be able to see how other people are utilizing the strengths, right? It's one thing for me to always talk about, but it's totally fun when you can see how people are actually utilizing them. So with that being said, here's what I want to end on today. Now, one of the things that I love about Shiree, right, and what she brought up is right, her relationships. She talked a lot about through her connectedness and relationships, and especially that story that she shared about her and Kim, like, her and her husband. I know them. I we've gone on a Friday date night with them. They're phenomenal people. They have incredible stories in terms of what they've done for each other, how they've gone through, and I can see this value in the connection. But at the same time, right, after 30 years of little annoyances, right, little things that would frustrate his futuristic and her input, right, in asking questions, causes frustration. It causes, the reality is, there is a real wedge. As great as a marriage is, as awesome as a marriage is, it still has its dynamics. It still has its frustrations. It still carries its weight, right? And what can dramatically shift when it comes time to this, the weight, the realness of this, is two things. Number one, understanding the way you naturally think, feel, and behave. Answering this question right here, and if you've been watching any of my interviews, will dramatically change, massively change what not necessarily what maybe you're doing, but how you're doing it, how you process it, how you're communicating it, how you're feeling about it, how are you thinking about it, how are you taking action within it, because you understand the way you naturally think, feel, and behave. So that's number one. The second thing is the moment you understand the way the other person in that relationship, this could be a spouse, that could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, this could be a coworker, this could be someone you work for, this could be so many different things. The way they naturally think, feel, and behave. Knowing the way that they naturally think, feel, and behave, And understanding that can dramatically reduce this wedge here. Like, if not, like, I mean, we could, my gosh, we could turn that into something so much smaller, right? The wedges still exist, but they don't have to be that size, because we now have clarity. We now have some understanding. We can sympathize, we can empathize, we can listen when they're talking from a futuristic, and when someone else is asking a lot of questions. Is it because they're questioning the other person? No, it's because it's a need that they're feeling, right? A level of understanding. And what a wonderful thing to clear up. Like, think of the value in that. Like, if Shiree could have put, and maybe that's a better question, right? Is, what is the value that has that simple understanding? How has it improved their relationship? If you have, think of the goal that you want with your relationship. Think of what you would like for it to improve. Think of understanding the way you naturally think, feel, and behave, and the value of knowing the way they naturally think, feel, and behave. What could be accomplished? What could be achieved? Doesn't have to be this big, right? It does not, the wedge does not have to be that big. It does not have to sit there. If we could understand, if we could have some clarity, if we could read on paper, just like what Shiree said, right? She listens to her so it clicks. She reads it so it clicks. She listened to her husband's so it could click, knowing these different things. How could that shift? What change could that create? And how important would that be to you? In every relationship, you have coworkers, your spouse, maybe you have a sibling, right? The story that I talked about with these two gals, they're business partners. They work together. They love each other. They have a phenomenal relationship. They love working with each other, but they're not moving the needle on their goal. They're not moving the needle on their business. They're not launching it. And it was because they weren't, although their strengths were complementing each other, they weren't figuring out how to support and strengthen the other dynamics, so they're actually moving the needle on what they want to move, right? Because this is all about performance. This is all about moving forward. This is all about growth. This is all about improving. So if you have and would love questions, so two things, two invites today. Number one, send me an email if you'd like to join the workshop. We're going to be having a workshop on June 25th, Saturday at 10 a.m. and at 2 p.m. It's going to be an online workshop, okay? Online workshop. I'll send you the registration. We're going to have some breakout rooms. We're going to make it super interactive, going to be super fun. If you have relationships, maybe you have, other people that want to understand you better, right? Maybe you guys are struggling there and you want to learn how to understand each other, how to appreciate, how to work within each other's strengths. Maybe you have a team. I have a group of ladies that asked me if they could bring their team to this event when I started talking about it and promoting it. Absolutely. So this would be a wonderful way in which all kinds of, whether siblings, spouses, coworkers, people, the team you lead, the more and more clarity, the more and more understanding, the more and more things can be connected. Okay. So that's the first invite. If you have something that you want to chat with me about, if you have a goal, if you're trying to accomplish something, if you're tired within your own marriage. So I work with marriages, I work with clients. If this is the reality, because you guys don't understand the way you naturally think, feel, and behave, you have a goal, you have things you're trying to improve in your marriage, but you're struggling because the reality is you don't know and you're not supporting it. Set up a call. Let's chat. Let's talk. I would absolutely love to work with you. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to show you. I'd love to clarify what is getting in the way. Why are you not on? I know everybody, right? We talk about being on the same page, but often we don't know what even that page looks like. We know the goal, the result, but are we taking in consideration all the different emotions, all the different thought processes, right? Are we taking all the software of the other person in consideration as we're trying to accomplish this? Or are you just trying to hit the wall harder and harder, faster and faster, bigger and bigger? Are you getting louder and louder, right? Or are you creating more and more distance, thinking, or talking less and less and less, thinking that that's the solution? I'm telling you right now, the solution to the problem right here is just clarity. That's it. You just have to understand the way you naturally think, feel, and behave, and understand the way the other person naturally thinks, feel, and behave. The moment that understanding is in place and both parties are interested in moving that forward, I'm telling you, it's a recipe for success, massive recipes for success. The same things that Shiree shared, and she, that one story, and she said, she had many more. I'm telling you, this dramatically shifted our marriage in terms of understanding, in terms of patience. And so Melissa and I will both be teaching this class. It'll be a 4-hour workshop. We'll both be teaching it together, and you'll get a chance to hear from her and what her perspective is and what her take is. Okay. So thank you guys so much for being here today. I appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate you guys. Please invite people. Please invite more people to come join us. I think in June, we're going to turn this into we're going to do every Saturday or every Wednesday and Saturday. We'll still do our strengths interviews, but I think I want to add some Q&A time. I missed the Q&A. The Q&A is fun. And so I'm working on a questionnaire. I'm working on how to adjust these, but this has been absolutely, it's been a blast to have these interviews and have more lined up. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you guys. Have a beautiful weekend. Have a beautiful time with your families. And I will see you back on Wednesday night at 7 p.m. for our next interview. All right. Thank you much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.